Hello, this is a video for St. Luke's Home on how to, for resident activities of daily living, for documentation, how to work with the residents, what it means to be actively involved with the resident on their activities of daily living, and what it means to be an observer of the activities of daily living. And we'll take you through that process of what it means for you as a CNA and how to incorporate it into your everyday care. What are activities of daily living, or ADLs as we call them as well? They're daily self-care needs of residents that focus specifically on bed mobility, transfers, locomotion, dressing, eating, toilet use, personal hygiene, or supervision. In this recording, we are going to focus on the bolded areas of locomotion, dressing, eating, and personal hygiene. These other areas as well, bed mobility, transfers, toilet use, and type of supervision, are important in other areas and should be charted when you do them, such as toilet use. Do they have a bowel movement, or in urinary incontinence, or going to the bathroom? And how do they transfer in bed? Those kind of things are definitely important and also play a role in this. What we're specifically focusing on in this video is maintaining the minutes for some of these restorative programs these residents have so that they can come here and maintain their abilities in their therapy programs that we have set up for them. So where do you fit into ADLs, or activities of daily living? What is the difference between physical help versus being an observer or observation? Observation, we support residents to participate independently as much as they are capable. We observe, let them do what they can do. If they're unable to do without assistance, we may move into physical help, aiding with areas residents are incapable of performing their own ADLs and they need assistance. These photos are great. The guy with the eyeglass there is observing the situation. He's not helping, but he is closely looking into his eyeglass to see what is going on. And then on the right side of the screen, you have the guy falling off the cliff. He is totally physically helping the situation to get that person back up onto the cliff. That is a total assistance. Our documentation is both what you observed and what you physically helped with. So, how do I observe ADLs? You can look at from the top. You have a resident that is totally dependent. All action is taken by staff. Resident did not participate at all. They're unwilling or unable. They're a complete Hoyer transfer, or they're unable to wheel self in their own wheelchair. That is totally dependent. If you need extensive assistance, would mean a resident that is having more ability than a total dependence to do their own. They have some weight-bearing assistance. They may be able to have their palms up with care. Staff use a muscle or a power lift. Lifting legs into bed or boosting up in bed. Or being able to lifting their hands to assist in some of their own feeding. That would be extensive assist. Our limited assistance would be talk and touch, no lifting. Their palms down with care. Staff assisted resident by touching back or holding their hand. Staff did not lift any part of the resident. Staff provided guided maneuvering that was not weight bearing. Resident is highly involved in the task. Supervision. Talking, but we're not going to touch. They're going to maybe need some cues. No hands-on care on the physical assist provided to the resident. Staff provided instruction or cueing, verbal, and staff uses oversight or monitoring. If they're independent, you don't have to talk to them, you don't have to touch the resident to assist them. There's no hands on the care. Staff did not assist. They monitor, instruct, nor cue the individual. The resident does all of the activity alone. You don't have to tell them to do it. So in this slide you see here the building of momentum. And in reality, we want momentum of a resident to go from total dependence all the way to independent. And some of them, when they get to the totally dependent, will probably never get to independence. But the momentum switch to be able to work with the resident, if we can get them from limited assistance to maybe some supervision assistance, would be great. Or total dependence to an extensive assistance would be a momentum switch. It's kind of like in the bottom corner there, that little washer on a string. It's kind of wobbling back and forth between different sides it's on. And that's kind of how our residents are on every day, hour by hour. They're going to be switching. So what you did with them the day before may not be the same. They may not be an independent today, and they maybe needed some supervision. And you need to chart it accurately when you're doing your documentation of what you're observing and knowing that residents change on a daily basis. Some helpful tips include transfers from floor after a fall. How did they do? Did they need to get up? Bed mobility may include lifting legs or boosting up in bed. Did you touch the resident at all? That's an important factor. Did you assist the resident to eat any part of the meal? Did you document minutes spent with the resident doing ADLs? In general, residents have to do 15 minutes a day of some of these therapies, is what is expected for some of our nursing home requirements. So now we're going to start looking at some of the documentation parts. The photo on the bottom shows an individual who is in active locomotion, participating all by themselves. So when we look at walking, do you need to hand the resident a walker or a cane? Or if they're wheeling themselves, unlocking their brakes on their wheelchair or adjusting their foot pedals to facilitate foot motion while wheeling, can they use their hands to wheel? Those are different types of locomotion, but still can be categorized as how independent is the resident. Some people are wheelchair bound their entire life, depending on their disability. Others are able to walk or may walk some days and may need locomotion other times. Walking in room. Here's an example of kind of how we document and what's our rationale for it. So Mr. R is able to walk freely in his room, obtaining clothes from the closet, turning on the TV without any cueing or physical assistance from staff at all. Our documentation would look like this. Staff assistance would be coded as this individual is independent. Staff support would be coded as no setup or physical help from staff. Our rationale is the resident is independent. So we marked him as independent, no setup or physical help. Locomotion on the unit. Walking in the hallway. Mr. X ambulated daily up and down the hallway on his unit with a cane. He did not require any setup or physical help from staff at any. So what would our documentation look like? He would be independent with no setup or physical help from staff. Our rationale, the resident requires no setup or help from staff at any time. Another example was a resident had back surgery 2 months ago. 2 staff members must physically support the resident as he is walking down the hallway because of his unsteady gait and balanced problem. How would we document this? He would be an extensive assistance with 2-person physically assisting them. The resident was ambulated 3 times with resident partially participating in the task. The 2 staff members were required to physically support the resident so he could ambulate. Therefore, he was in extensive assistance and needed 2 people to assist him. A lot of programs that you're going to see here at St. Luke's deal with the importance of walking a resident from their room to the table. It promotes maintaining a resident's ability for functional abilities. Your documentation will help ensure that the resident gets 15 minutes of quality exercise. Staff must document time spent walking with the individual. It provides one-to-one activity with the residents. They value the time spent with you as well as the physical and quality of health abilities that they get from it, which can be reducing skin issues, promoting lung and cardiovascular health. I will show you an example of what our walk to dine lists look like on the units while you're working. This is a fictitious example with what could happen with residents, and how we do this is anything that is coded green is considered a restorative therapy to be doing. That would mean they're actively going to be going down to the therapy room, or one of our CNA therapists is actively going to be working with them in their room. Any area that is highlighted yellows is what the CNA on the floor will be doing and documenting. So if we look at this example here, we have a few areas that will be needing restorative programs by you as a floor CNA. Anything that has to deal with dressing and grooming, which we'll talk about some examples of those. And this would be a resident that would need walking and help on the unit. In this category, we have something that's highlighted green. That would be done by the restorative therapy. If we have restorative dining, that means how much assistance and help do they need with eating? And they need assistance with meals. Every day when you come onto your unit, you're going to want to take a look at who your residents are and what they need help with, and extra documentation that you're required to do as staff. Another area would be personal hygiene. Would be an example to look for a resident with personal hygiene needs so that they could receive good teeth brushing and cares in the bathroom. What is their assistance level of care and need? Look for these at your nurse's station, at the beginning of your shift, during your shift, to look for changes. They may change a couple times a week, so stay in tune with making sure that you are providing these services to the residents. These areas will also turn blue on your Matrix Care Assist for documentation under the Restorative tab so that you can qualify minutes. Your Restorative Nursing tab would look like this. This is a fictitious learning environment. The Restorative Nursing tab would allow you to click on walking and would allow you to put in how many minutes of walking did you do that day. Maybe it was only 7. And how did they do? Did they use a walker? They needed one person assistance. They did really great, and they hadn't changed. And put in here how many feet that they walked, and save your documentation. You have eating, dressing or grooming, and other areas that may show. Please make sure that you are documenting on those needed residents every shift, and specifically including minutes and their abilities. Let's move on to dressing. On the bottom is a diagram of an individual putting on their clothes in a 7-step process to put on the pants. Retrieving clothes from the closet and lying out on the resident's bed and handing the resident a shirt. How do they do? Are they able to perform any of the functions, or do they need assistance? Were they able to do all of it on their own? Were they able to put on their shirt, but they couldn't quite do their shoes? Was the resident a total 2-person assistance with dressing, meaning they couldn't do anything at all? Those are the kind of things to document. Looking at mealtime, this can include cutting meat and opening containers at meals, giving one food item at a time. After staff deliver Mr. K's meal tray, he consumes all food and fluids without any cueing or physical help during. The documentation for Mr. K would be staff assistance as independent and no setup or physical help from him. Why? The resident is completely independent. Another example, one staff member had to verbally cue the resident to eat slowly and drink throughout each meal. Staff assistance would be coded supervision. Staff support would be no setup or physical help from staff. Why? The resident required staff supervision, cueing, and reminders for a safe meal completion daily. Personal hygiene. The photo diagrams here show a smiling individual brushing their own teeth, and on the bottom, an individual who needed total assistance from a staff member to brush their teeth. It's an expectation of staff to brush resident shifts in the morning and in the evening. For personal hygiene, it could be providing a wash basin and grooming the resident. An example would be Mrs. J normally completes all hygiene tests independently. 3 mornings, however, she was to brush and style her hair because of elbow pain, so a staff member did it for her. How would you document this? It would be staff assistance, extensive assistance. Staff support would be 1-person physical assist. Why? A staff member had to complete part of the activity of personal hygiene for the resident. The assistance, although non-weight bearing, is considered full staff performance of personal hygiene. Subtask of brushing and styling her hair would be extensive assistance, 1-person physical assist. And personal hygiene can be of different types: hair combing, grooming, teeth brushing, etc. So that would end the slides for this presentation. It's a great example to maintain a sheet that you'll be provided with new employee orientation for coding ADLs that discusses these 5 areas and some helpful tips, and to keep that with you as you continue to document and learn and see the importance of documenting the amount of minutes worked with residents, and to focus on these areas for total dependence, extensive assistance, limited assist, supervision, and independence. And again, the areas bolded that really work with the restorative program are locomotion, dressing, eating, personal hygiene. So maintain those focuses. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you do have questions, feel free to ask one of your managers, charge nurse, CNA on the floor. Thank you.